Thank you, Miss Top.
Tuffy, where's that damn file?
I beg your pardon, Mr. Bennett. Which file was that?
The Calthorpe transfer. I asked for the papers an hour ago.
Miss Top.
The relevant documents are in Mr. Roberts' in tray.
Sometimes I wonder if that woman was actually born like the rest of us. I think she was knitted by the Ministry of Labour. She could have told me an hour ago that you had the wretched file, but oh no, not our Tuffy.
Neville.
Hmm?
Do you ever feel that you've been left out?
What of what?
Life? What's going on out there?
Can't say I do, old chap. What?
Don't you ever feel this is it? This is all you're ever going to have? This, that?
Dearie me, what brought this on?
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps I need a holiday.
You need a holiday, Robert. Aha.
Wills, conveyancing, investments, more wills. What happened to life? The most exciting thing I've done since VE day is fall off a horse.
Well, at least we got through it in one piece, old man.
It's the inevitability of it all. Even down to Miss Tuff's biscuit routine. Have you ever noticed? Digestive Tuesday and Thursday, ginger Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Never varies. Summer or winter, hell or high water.
You seem a bit put out. Why don't you call it a day?
Don't be ridiculous, Neville. It's only 4 o'clock.
Good Lord, Robert. Senior partners, old chap, can do what they like.
Impudent lackey.
I can't understand where she's got to. It's only 10 minutes' walk from the school.
Mrs. Wynne, I don't want to keep on at a subject which must be unpleasant for you. Has Betty spoken any more about the weeks she was missing?
Why, Betty? How can anyone be so cruel? Bless her heart.
Ah,
Have you been, love?
don't start, Mum.
Inspector Grant's been waiting such a long time.
She doesn't want to go. Dear love. I'm afraid I have to insist that she does.
Can't you make an arrest without her? The poor kid's scared stiff.
You've no need to be frightened, Betty. I'll be there with you.
How do you expect her to feel going into that house again? She says she won't, unless I go too.
Betty? Does she really have to do this?
I'm afraid so, yes. She's made a very serious accusation.
Bloody right, it's serious.
Sleigh. I'm afraid this business has got him all worked up so he can't think straight.
They must be mad who beat her up. You didn't see her that night. Her face all swollen and covered in blood. You think she made that up?
Leslie.
I have seen the doctor's report, thank you. Now, Mrs. Wynne, we really should be going if you want Betty home before dark.
All right, love.
Don't worry, Mrs. Scott here will look after her.
What about a tea?
I'll make sure she gets a sandwich at the Milford station.
What are you staring at, you nosy old cow?
Blair, Hampton Bennett. Robert Blair speaking.
I'm so glad to have caught you, Mr. Blair. I thought you might have gone for the day. My name's Sharp, Marion Sharp. I'd rather not explain over the telephone what's happened, but I'm afraid I'm in trouble and I need a lawyer. I mean, I need one now, this minute. Will you come, Mr. Blair? I'd be so grateful. I live with my mother at the franchise. I'm sure you know the place, about a mile out of Milford on the Larborough Road. Mr. Blair, I'm Marion Sharp.
Good afternoon.
Come in, please.
I'm afraid I left the gates open. I hope that's all right.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm more grateful than I can say. Inspector Hallam gave me your name. We haven't been in Milford very long, you see.
Well, I know you and your mother by sight. Or at least that splendid car of yours.
The police are in here.
I take it it's nothing to do with your car. When people say they're in trouble in Milford, it generally means one of two things. Either an affiliation order or an offence against the traffic laws.
I doubt if Scotland Yard are terribly interested in minor traffic offences.
Scotland Yard?
I haven't murdered anyone, if that's what you're thinking.
The point is, are you supposed to have murdered someone?
I'm supposed to have kidnapped someone. You know Inspector Hallam, of course.
John?
And this is Detective Inspector Grant.
Glad you could come, Mr. Blair. Couldn't very well proceed until Miss Sharp had some kind of support.
Is there to be a charge, Inspector?
I'm supposed to have abducted and beaten up someone. Beaten her black and blue, apparently.
Beaten her?
That girl sitting outside in the car.
Perhaps I'd better do the explaining, Miss Sharp.
Yes, do. After all, it's your story. Sit down, Mr. Blair.
Will your mother be joining us?
I hope not. But she lies down in the afternoon. I'm hoping we can get this whole business over and done with before she wakes up.
Yes. Just before Easter, Mr. Blair, a 15-year-old schoolgirl called Elizabeth Kane, who lives near Birmingham, went to spend a short holiday with a married aunt who lives in Larborough. She went by coach because they passed right through Larborough, and she'd be within a few minutes' walk of her aunt's house when she got off. After she'd been with her aunt for a week, Mrs. Wynne received a postcard from the girl.
Mrs. Wynne?
The girl's parents were killed in an air raid in '43. Mrs. Wynne's a legal guardian.
Now, in this postcard, the girl said she was having a lovely time and was going to stay on at her aunt's for a bit. When she hadn't arrived home the day before she was due back at school, Mrs. Wynne telegraphed to find out what was going on. She learned that Elizabeth had stayed on in Larborough for only 3 days after sending that card. Her aunt had seen her off at the coach stop on her way home 2 weeks previously.
It's on the 28th of March.
Mrs. Wynne went straight to the police, of course, but given the time it took for the telegrams to go back and forth, it was almost 3 weeks before before anyone realized anything was wrong. And then one night she turned up, suddenly, late at night on the doorstep, in a terrible state.
20th of April.
And I mean terrible, Mr. Blair. Some of the bruises were still visible much later when she made her statement to me. That child had been very extensively knocked about. It was a week before the police had a full statement from her. To begin with, all they could get was that she'd been kidnapped. She was completely hysterical.
From where had she been kidnapped?
The coach stop.
I thought you said her aunt put her onto the coach.
No, only to the stop. The coach was late.
The suggestion is, Mr. Blair, that my mother and I enticed a schoolgirl into our car and then into this house, and that we beat her almost senseless every time she tried to escape.
If you don't mind, Miss Sharp.
Do you wonder that I wanted help in a hurry?
The girl says in her statement that while she waited at the coach stop, it started to get dark and then to rain. The coach was very late, or at least that's what she thought. Then a car pulled up at the curb. At first, she could only see the driver, a woman wearing a bright silk scarf around her neck. She asked the girl if she wanted a lift. The woman told her that the Birmingham coach had already gone. She could get another from Mains Hill in about 40 minutes. She was very grateful for the offer of a lift and got in beside an older woman in the back. Very little was said on the journey. The older woman never spoke at all. It wasn't until the car suddenly left the main road that the girl realized they were no longer heading towards Mains Hill. The younger woman told her she still had plenty of time before the coach left. Enough time for a cup of tea. Soon after that, they pulled off the road. The younger woman got out and opened some large iron gates. And then the car was driven up a drive to the house. It was too dark for her to see what it looked like. They went through a hallway first, and then into a large kitchen where the younger woman made her a cup of coffee, not tea.
Is it difficult to entice anyone on the way out here? You're not looking for any work. We pay you very well.
While the girl drank coffee, which she didn't like, the younger woman apologized for the state of the kitchen and told her that they had no maid to help them. She asked the girl if she was looking for a job. The girl said she wasn't.
She doesn't like the idea at all. Joyce doesn't like that.
She doesn't remember much after that until she woke up in the attic. She remembers both women dragging her up a flight of carpeted stairs, and then a second flight with something hard underfoot. When she woke up, she found herself lying on a bed in a room with a round window which wouldn't open. The door was locked. She had been kept prisoner, Mr. Blair, for over 3 weeks. and repeatedly beaten by both women, or deprived of food, if she refused to mend the linen they brought her.
I know domestic help is scarce nowadays, but that is ridiculous.
There's no end to the extravagances of human conduct, Mr. Blair.
To enlist a servant by forcibly detaining her, Inspector, to say nothing of starving and beating, and no one is going to be that absurd.
No normal person, certainly.
Perhaps Miss Sharp can provide an alibi for the 28th of March?
No, of course I can't. Our days here hardly vary at all. I couldn't possibly remember what I was doing 6 weeks ago. Could you?
Yes.
How did the girl escape?
She tried to get out of the roof at first, but they caught her breaking the window and beat her almost senseless. Then she noticed that they always left the key in the lock. And one night she managed to poke it out with a pencil and pull it back under the door on a piece of paper.
How resourceful.
And when she got out of the house, she just ran.
She was picked up semi-conscious on the Birmingham-Mainsville Road.
And her suitcase?
Never saw it again.
Three strange men. How extravagant, my dear. Would you present them to me, please?
This gentleman is Detective Inspector Grant from Scotland Yard, Inspector Hallam from Milford, and this is Mr. Blair from Blair, Hayward and Bennett.
Blair, Hayward and Bennett. So you occupy that lovely house in Milford High Street?
Part of it, yes.
It needs retiling.
Yes, I'm afraid it does.
This is difficult to explain quickly, but I'll try. The police have brought a young girl here.
You shouldn't be sitting in that chair. You're much too heavy for it.
Hallam, since you're up, perhaps you would,
Yes, excuse me.
There's a schoolgirl waiting in a car outside. She was missing from home last month. She told the police that she was locked up in an attic by two women who beat her and starved her.
I see. And was she referring to us?
I'm afraid we seem to fit the description. So does the house.
She described the house quite minutely, Mrs. Sharp. And the occupant.
How remarkable. And what did we beat her with?
A silver-topped cane and a dog lead.
We have no dog, Inspector.
I take it you brought this person here so that she may identify us as the people that held her prisoner.
Have you any objections, Mrs. Sharp?
On the contrary, Inspector. I look forward to the meeting with impatience. It's not every afternoon I go to my rest a dull old woman and rise a potential monster.
Can you imagine a more nightmare piece of nonsense?
Believe me, Miss Sharp, I've come across many stories much more incredible.
You have my sympathy, young man.
Why is that, Mrs. Sharp?
Well, I imagine criminal lunacy is a little out of your line.
Oh, really, Mother?
Just a little. However, the distractions of Milford are pretty mild. I find all this very stimulating.
Excuse me. Now, have you ever seen either of these women before?
Yes, these are the women.
I have never, to my knowledge, seen this girl before. I did not give her a lift anywhere on any occasion. She wasn't brought into this house either by me or by my mother, nor was she kept here.
Mrs. Sharp?
The two people on beating terms were distressingly ill-acquainted.
It's understood then, Mrs. Sharp, that you also deny Miss Kane's story.
Yes.
Miss Kane, this is a very grave accusation. If you have any doubt at all, you must say so now. Are these the two women who detained you, took your clothes from you, forced you to mend linen, starved you, and beat you?
Yes.
Is the girl a virgin?
Mrs. Sharp, I do not think that's relevant.
Well, I do. If I'd been missing from my home for any length of time, it's the first thing my mother would have wanted to know about me.
Inspector Grant, Are we to be arrested now that this girl's identified us?
Certainly not.
No, things are a long way from that.
And what do you propose to do?
To go around this house so that Miss Kane's various descriptions of the rooms she says she was taken to can be verified. If they are, I report to my superior and he decides in conference what further steps to take.
It's an admirable caution, Inspector. Now, if you'll excuse me, I shall go back to my interrupted rest.
Don't you wish to be present when we go around your house?
Oh, dear, no, I've not the slightest doubt Miss Kane will identify our attic. I should be surprised beyond words if she failed to do so. She's already proved herself a most remarkable liar. Oh, goodbye, Mr. Blair. I do hope you continue to find us stimulating.
I take it you have no objection to letting Miss Kane see the relevant parts of your house?
No, of course not.
The car.
Ah, yes.
The car's in the garage at the back of the house.
Shall we, then?
Sorry. Sorry.
Miss Sharp, you see my position. You say you've never set eyes on Elizabeth Kane before this afternoon. Yet she's not only described this house in which she says she was kept a prisoner, but she's also described you and your mother in great detail. Now, if she isn't telling the truth, can you think of any explanation?
No.
I take it you've investigated this girl before accepting so much of her story.
Yes, Mr. Blair, the police have made a very thorough investigation. By all accounts, she has an excellent record. A quiet girl, popular at school, and a settled home life with the family who took her in during the war.
And what have they got to say about all this?
Considering they look upon the child as their own now, they've taken the whole distressing business rather well.
And all that remains is for me to take the whole distressing business with the same admirable detachment. Could we please get this over with, Inspector?
Yes, of course. Hallam, would you wait down here with Mrs. Scott, please? I don't think it's necessary for us all to go upstairs.
Right you are.
Miss Sharp, perhaps you'd lead the way. You'll remember, Mr. Blair, that Miss Kane said she was dragged up a first flight of stairs which were carpeted, and a second flight with something hard underfoot.
They were in there, on top of a big trunk.
Those suitcases have been lying exactly where you see them since we moved into the house 18 months ago.
And they've never been in there?
No, no.
I remember that round one.
That window has always been cracked like that.
Was there any heating in here, Elizabeth? I seem to remember it rather cold in April. Coldest since 1881.
They gave me some blankets from the trunk.
And where was the trunk?
Here, with all those cases on top. The bed was over there.
There was a bed there. I got rid of it.
You sold it?
I gave it to the woman we get our dairy stuff from, Staples Farm.
I see. And when was that, Miss Sharp?
About a year ago. I don't remember precisely.
There was a sort of chair thing, too, by the bed.
A chair thing?
With a lid.
I think she means a commode, Inspector.
Ah.
Boy's own stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. You've saved me the trouble. Miss Kane, can you remember what this trunk looked like?
Square with leather straps and a sort of tray thing inside.
I acknowledge that we have such a trunk. My mother has it in her bedroom. She uses it to store things in, but it has never been up here.
Thank you, Miss Shaw. I'm sure there's no need to trouble your mother again this afternoon. Now, shall we go down to the kitchen? Now, in her statement, Miss Kane said we went into a large kitchen with a stone floor and one of those rows of bells. The curtains were a greeny pattern. The pan she heated the milk in was blue. It had a lot of chips off around the bottom.
Take your pick. I doubt if there's a kitchen in England that hasn't got pans like these.
One of the wheels was painted a lighter color from the others and didn't look as if it belonged. The different wheel was in front on my side as it was standing at the bus stop. I ask you again, Miss Sharp, how could she have known about the franchise at all? So much about it. Or you, if she'd never been here before.
I haven't the least idea.
My men made a thorough search of the district, Miss Sharp. There's no other house between Loughborough and Milford that fits the girl's description.
It seems such an unlikely place to pick on, doesn't it? A remote house on a lonely road, barely visible behind that wall. What do you make of it, Mr. Blair?
Oh, a piece of sensationalism by an unbalanced adolescent.
Oh, come now. She's hardly sensational. Look at her. Transparently truthful was the phrase her form mistress used. She's just an ordinary, well-spoken of young girl who's never been in any kind of trouble, in school or out of it. I'll be able to get you on the telephone if I need to talk to you again.
We have no intention of going anywhere, Inspector.
You've been very helpful and courteous. Mr. Blair?
I've left my briefcase inside. You do realize, don't you, that the girl has an enormous advantage over you? In the matter of evidence, I mean. She's free to describe almost anything she likes as part of your household. If she happens to be right, it's strong evidence for her. If, however, she's wrong, it's not evidence for you.
The way she was wrong about the colour of the kitchen curtains.
She could simply say that you changed them.
What happens now?
I very much doubt if Grant has a case that he'd want to present in court. It's the girl's word against yours with no other backing on either side. I don't think he could hope to get a verdict.
But her statement's so detailed. Suppose he does bring it to court. It means my mother and I will be facing a criminal charge.
Whatever happens, I think we'd better wait for a couple of days to see what Grant means to do. He has much better facilities for arriving at the truth than I do.
Coming from a lawyer, Mr. Blair, it's a touching tribute to the honesty of the police.
It doesn't pay them to be satisfied with anything less than the truth, Miss Sharp.
Do you believe that girl's story?
Look here, I'm awfully sorry. It's criminal law, you see. I'm just a country solicitor. If you'd only explained on the telephone what the trouble was, I could have told you right away. You'd been much better off with somebody who's used to police cases. My firm simply isn't equipped to deal with this sort of thing. I honestly feel the Sharp would be much wiser.
Do you know what I honestly feel, Mr. Blair? I feel like someone drowning in a river. All I need is someone to give me a hand. But you're just standing there, making excuses.
Aunt Lynn, have you met those new people at the franchise yet?
No. I've seen them, of course. Very odd.
Why do you say that?
Why do you ask?
I had to go out there this afternoon. They wanted some legal advice.
I hope they pay you for it. I'm told they're as poor as church mice.
Well, rich enough to buy the biggest property for miles.
No, dear, no. It was left to them by old Mr. Meredith. He was Mrs. Sharp's brother.
You do know something about them, then?
I'm not the one to pass on idle gossip, Robert. I've seen them, as I said, in Milford. But I believe they do most of their shopping in Ham Green.
So, they're not part of the social scene yet?
I don't think they ever will be. They have an odd air of being self-sufficient.
Yes, they do, don't they? I must have driven past that house 1,000 times. I don't think I've actually seen it until today.
It's very isolated. I expect they have a problem with servants.
Not anxious to take it on, Neville.
Why?
Since when in this ivory tower has anybody been on calling terms with Scotland Yard?
Well, it seems to me you made your reluctance pretty plain to Miss, what's her name yesterday?
Miss Sharp.
Good morning, Mr. Roberts.
Morning, Tilly.
Tea, Tuffy, I'm parched. You really are a very odd man, Robert. Only yesterday you were moaning about how dull your life is. Now when something a little out of the ordinary drops in your lap, you run like hell in the opposite direction.
I just don't know why John Hallam recommended me.
Ill-judged philanthropy?
He knows I'm not a criminal lawyer.
Oh, perhaps he thought these people needed a friend. Someone to stand by them and tell them what they didn't need to answer if they didn't want to. You don't need a training in crime for that. Even if he did recommend you, it doesn't put you under any obligation.
Just by being there, I've identified myself with their interests.
A skinny spinster of 40, living with a rude old mother in an ugly house, who wants legal advice for which she probably can't pay.
I never said she was skinny.
From what you've told me, they sound as guilty as sin.
Quite frankly, they terrify me. Please get off my desk.
Why not edge them off onto Ben Carley? If they've done something they want to get away with, he's God's gift. Carley could bail the devil out of hell.
Hello, Carley. Mildred.
Afternoon, Blair.
Bobby, darling, haven't seen you for simply ages. Where have you been hiding? You do know Anita Kenton, don't you? Oh, of course you do. Anita from Ham Green.
Hello.
Hello. The most eligible bachelor in Milford, darling. Quite a dark horse, I'd say.
I hear you were down at the franchise the other day.
The franchise? Really?
The telephone round here is about as private as the wireless.
As a matter of fact, it was La Pinna here who saw you leaving the place.
Yes, police cars too, darling. Quite a surprise.
I take it the Sharps haven't been shoplifting, have they?
They haven't been shoplifting.
Do tell, is the rumour true? Is the old girl a witch?
She's supposed to be.
Well, a strong local support for that belief.
I rather thought witch hunting had gone out of fashion.
Oh, don't you believe it? Give this inbred crowd of degenerates a good excuse, they'll witch hunt with the best of them.
Seriously, can't you imagine those franchise women being burnt at the stake? Fanatics' faces, if ever I saw them.
Well, if you'll excuse me. Nice to meet you, Miss Kenton.
Be seeing you.
TTFN.
Bye-bye, Bobby, darling. Come and see us soon.
Thanks, sir.
So much for an unprejudiced jury.
Hmm?
What time are you going to see Wynyard this afternoon?
3.
Make a detour, will you? I'd like you to drop in a note to the franchise.
Well, why not ring? You've changed your mind about representing them.
Can't just abandon them to someone like Carly.
All right. Always wanted to see what it was like inside those walls.
There's a letterbox by the gate. No need to go in.
Bye. Bye. See you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Come and sit down, love.
What's the matter?
Inspector Grant has something he wants to tell you.
We've decided not to proceed with the case, Betty.
Why?
I'm afraid we lack corroborative evidence.
What does that mean?
I'll tell you what it means. It means they're not going to prosecute those bitches.
It means that at the moment, it's simply your word against theirs. We need more evidence, stronger evidence, before we can proceed.
It's not right. None of it.
They think I made it all up.
It's not like that, love.
It's wrong, Mum. Someone's got to put it right. They shouldn't be allowed to get away with it.
There's no point getting worked up. There's nothing we can do.
Isn't there?
Leslie?
I know someone who'll listen.
Leslie?
No one's going to beat my sister and get away with it.
Listen. Leslie, please listen to me.
The whole thing's a bloody liberty, Mum.
Thank you, Miss Tuff.
With the letters, Mr. Robert.
I'll see to them now.
Why didn't you tell me she was like that?
Knock next time, please. That could have been a client.
She's amazing, Robert.
Who is?
The sharp woman, of course.
All you had to do was to drop a note to the letterbox.
She met me at the gate.
I was under the impression she slept every afternoon.
Marion Sharp? I don't believe that one ever sleeps.
You seem to have become remarkably intimate for a doorstep acquaintance.
We had tea together.
I thought you were on your way to see Wynyard.
Well, I'll see him on Monday.
You mean you've been at the franchise all afternoon?
Yes, I suppose I have, yes.
Did you telephone Mr. Wynyard and explain why you weren't coming?
Sorry.
Do it now, will you?
It's a bit late, isn't it?
Just do it, Neville. Please make your apologies pretty bloody abject.
All right, all right.
It's about time you stop behaving like an undergraduate.
Admit it, though. You're as stunned by that woman as I am.
Oh, get out. I've got work to do. Nice motor car. What are your regulars?
Nope. Trouble.
Take a look at it, would you, Stan? Just doesn't sound right.
You take my tip?
About what?
Hack Emma, the Irish filly.
Don't tell me. You forgot. Sorry. Not on my mind at the moment. Oh. Did she win?
By a length and a half. It's no good, Mr. Blair. You'll have to leave it. It's your piston rings.
Oh, never mind. Shan't need it tonight.
Strange lady.
What way?
Yes.
What? What was wrong with her car?
Nothing. She just wanted some paint removed from one of her wheels.
Here's Robert.
Go on.
And another cup. How late, dear?
Left the car with Stan. All right for some? Business or pleasure?
Grant's lost his nerve on the franchise affair.
He's dropping the case.
Have you ever known the yard to drop a case? I'd have risked it.
Well, thank goodness you're not in charge. I don't think abduction and detention have sullied our files for centuries. I'm not even sure if it's a felony or a misdemeanor. Oh, well. What did you make of the Sharps?
Plausible liars.
Might just as well say that about the girl.
You think so? She seemed quite genuine to me.
She's certainly a prosecuting counsel's dream of a witness.
I looked it up in the dictionary, you know.
Look what up?
Franchise. Such an odd thing to call a house. Means sanctuary, freedom from arrest.
Very appropriate.
Ought I to call on the Sharps, do you think, dear? If you're going to know them, it would be polite.
I think not.
No, perhaps you're right. Very uncomfortable people, I imagine. In Spain, monasteries used to be franchises for criminals.
What about chickens?
Chickens?
Well, they don't take much to look after. We could fence off part of the kitchen garden. What do you think?
Have you ever looked closely at a hen's face? It's concentrated evil.
No chickens. Milford, 237.
Miss Sharp, it's Robert Blair, Hayward Manager.
Good evening.
I thought you'd like to know that Inspector Grant has decided not to proceed with the case. Miss Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Blair. You can't imagine what a relief that is. Why did they suddenly decide to drop the case?
Oh, they're not dropping it exactly, just sitting quiet. Well, the official line is that on present evidence, they're not taking any proceedings.
Somehow I don't find that very reassuring, Mr. Blair. When you said they weren't proceeding with the case, I naturally thought you meant that that girl had confessed to her pack of lies.
Miss Sharp, we can't very well discuss this on the telephone. Would it be convenient if I...
Mother and I could come to your office. Would Monday morning be all right?
Monday, yes. About noon?
12 o'clock on Monday. Thank you.
So you've changed your mind about defending those peculiar people?
I haven't changed my mind, Aunt Lynn, and I'm not defending them, I'm representing them.
It's really very irritating of you, Robert. If you are acting for them, I shan't be able to talk about it to anyone. It's like wanting to be sick and having to postpone it. Waitress.
Perhaps we ought to forget about coffee this morning.
Certainly not. Waitress.
She's deliberately ignoring you, Mother.
It's a matter of principle.
You can pay too high a price for your principles.
Hens' faces. All of them. Vicious hens' faces.
Stan?
Morning.
Just dropped in to pay my bill.
Oh, it's around here somewhere. Try over there. Any tips?
Not a thing.
Because I'm £2 down on a cow called Bright Promise.
So cows are putting your faith in horseflesh.
Good God. Oh, you found it then?
Can I borrow this, Stan?
Take it. Saturdays. Nice little number, that. Reminds me of a bint I had in Egypt.
Sorry to keep you waiting. I had to see to Leslie's sandwiches.
You don't have to speak to him, Mum.
I have told the police I'm coming to see you.
If it's Betty you want to see, you can't. She's staying with friends.
They even had reporters waiting outside the school yesterday. I wanted her away from all the fuss.
Yes, I'm afraid it's not just the bulletin now. They all seem to have it on the front page this morning. Betty must regret having given her story quite so willingly.
Look here. You don't understand what's
I'm not saying Leslie did right to go to the bulletin, Mr. Blair. But he meant well. He's always been devoted to Betty.
Well, personally, I'd rather be beaten every day for a fortnight than have my picture on the front page of that rag.
If you'd been beaten every day for a fortnight and no one did anything about it, you'd be glad to have your picture anywhere if it got you justice.
Leslie.
I'm off. You sure you'll be all right?
Come on. Leslie's father. He was killed in North Africa. Sit down, please.
Thank you. Leslie is quite right, Mrs. Wynne. You're under no obligation to talk to me.
I suppose you have to do your best for those women if you're their lawyer. We have nothing to hide, anyway. Would you like a cigarette?
Thank you.
Thank you. What is it you want to know?
Just one or two things about Betty's statement to the police. The night she came home, for example, was she really only wearing a frock and a pair of shoes?
Yes.
No socks, no vest, underclothes. It was very cold in April.
That's all she was wearing. Those women took everything else away from her.
It's just that Betty says they gave her blankets to keep warm, and it doesn't seem to make sense to take away most of her clothes and then give her blankets. Why not just return the clothes?
Why don't you ask them?
The police say that Betty wouldn't talk to them for quite some time, not until after she'd told you and Leslie what happened.
She wouldn't tell us to begin with. But Leslie got it out of her bit by bit. They adore each other, you know, she and Leslie. They used to do everything together until he got engaged.
Oh, really? When was that?
Christmas.
Must have been very difficult for Betty. Mrs. Wynne, if it ever occurs to you that anything in Betty's statement doesn't ring true, I hope you won't let sleeping dogs lie. Innocent people may suffer.
She doesn't tell lies. And if I believed her at the beginning, I'm not likely to doubt her now.
Did she have anything in her pockets?
Only the lipstick.
A lipstick?
It was in the pocket of her dress when she came home that night. Nothing else, just a lipstick. Betty says she bought it in Loughborough when she was staying with her aunt.
She's a little young for makeup, isn't she?
Oh, it was only for play. All little girls do it. I was experimenting with my mum's stuff when I was 8 or 9.
So, you didn't find it at all odd?
I just thought it was a bit queer. Those women took everything else away from her, but left that.
Yoo-hoo, Miss Blair. Custard tarts, my dear. How extravagant. No wonder Robert's putting on weight. Now, do tell us, my dear, what's the latest on our cause célèbre? They are Robert's clients, aren't they?
If you imagine for one moment that Robert would discuss his business with me, you're very much mistaken.
Haven't you heard what they're saying?
Who's saying what?
That they not only starved and beat the poor child, they actually threatened to kill her as well.
Who on earth told you that?
I heard it from Dr. Borthwick's dispenser not half an hour ago. Apparently, that dreadful old woman dangled the poor child out of a bedroom window by her wrists. Can you imagine?
I saw that picture too, Anita. It was on at the Regal last week. I'm surprised at you both repeating such absurd stories.
I suppose your nephew knows what he's doing, Miss Blair. But I can't help thinking it's rather odd of him to represent those franchise women.
If you were accused of, say, stealing something from a counter in Woolworths, and you couldn't disprove it, I dare say you'd seek legal advice, wouldn't you?
No one would ever accuse Anita of stealing from Woolworths, darling. I'm sure she's never set foot in the place. It's not just us, darling. The whole of Milford's talking about it.
What you mean, Mildred, is that you are talking about it to the whole of Milford.
Really? That woman's quite impossibly rude.
Excuse me.
There's a timetable on the wall outside.
No, I just want to know whether...
This is a private office.
Sorry, mate.
What do you want?
Docket for the Norton Spares.
Just want to find out if you ever use double-deckers on the route between Milford and Loughborough. It's rather important. I'm a solicitor. I need this information.
I don't care if you are the Shah of Persia. You, wait there.
You want to use a double-decker?
Oh, no, I just want to find out if one ever ran on that route in March.
Could have. When the old singles break down, they use doubles.
Would it be possible to find out exactly when they ran?
In this firm, it's recorded every time you spit. But you get nothing out of that old buzzard. He guards his schedules like the bleeding crown jewels. Dunno, mate. It's more than my job's worth crossing him. You're on.
gentlemen. Marian! It's Robert Blair.
I suppose this is what royalty has to put up with.
How long have they been there?
All day. Been waiting for the police to come and move them on. We provided last night's entertainment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp.
After that, the local youth hoisted each other up on the wall, sat there being offensive for half an hour, until Mother pointed her stick at them, threatened to shoot.
Lack of education is an extraordinary handicap when it comes to being offensive. They had no resource at all.
Well, I'm afraid you're stuck with the press for a while. You're going to camp out in Milford until things will simmer down.
Well, I can't tell you how glad we are to see you, Mr. Blair.
I've been trying to reach you all afternoon.
Oh, I'm sorry. After the fourth or fifth time, it really got to be too much.
Male or female?
One male, 4 female. They seemed at their most evil-minded round midnight. It's not the bad language I find so blood-freezing. It's the utter hatred. They all protest against violence, of course. And yet their dearest wish is to flog us both within an inch of our lives.
Do you have news for us?
It's too soon for anything positive. What I've been trying to do is to gather general information about Betty Kane.
Oh, it's Betty now, is it? Bye-bye, Elizabeth.
Neville, Mr. Bennett has gone to London to see what he can find out about the girl's parents, what sort of life she led before she was evacuated. It's probably a wild goose chase, but you never know.
And what have you been doing, Mr. Blair?
I've been talking to the girl's form mistress and to her aunt in Loughborough and to the family she lives with now, the Wynns.
And?
I found out the girl's brother got engaged at Christmas, which really put her nose out of joint. I think we should concentrate on the 2 weeks the girl spent in Loughborough before she disappeared. According to her aunt, Betty Kane spent the entire holiday on innocent visits to the pictures, window shopping, and sitting in tea shops with a pile of magazines.
You think our blameless schoolgirl might have met someone her aunt knows nothing about?
And that's what we have to find out, which is why, if you're agreeable, I should like to bring in a proper inquiry agent tomorrow.
Well, I think it would be best if our financial position were made clear to you. I will write to our solicitor in London and tell him to give you all details of what we have to come and go on, and then you can make arrangements for the spending of it in the defense of our good name. It's not exactly how we planned to spend it.
Well, let's be thankful we have it to spend. What do penniless people do in a case like this?
Oh, they rely on the goodwill of people like me. I've also been making inquiries in Loughborough bus garage, and I think I know how the girl could have seen over your wall. In the fortnight she spent with her aunt, there were 2 breakdowns on the Loughborough to Milford bus route, and on each occasion a double-decker was substituted for the usual single-deck.
Buses don't run along our road.
They did on the days that there were breakdowns. The double-deckers don't fit under Ham Green Bridge, apparently. Well, it doesn't prove anything, of course, but at least it shows how on 2 occasions the girl could have seen the house, the driveway, you two, and the car.
The inside of the house, how could she have seen that?
I don't know. Could she have been told about it by someone? Gardener? Window cleaner?
We've never had a gardener.
When did you last see a window cleaner?
Well, there was that Glynn girl from Staples Farm.
Oh?
Rose Glynn. Oh, she came every day for about 3 weeks when we first moved in. Scrubbed floors and so on.
What happened to her?
Well, nothing really. Just ran out of things for her to do.
How old?
15? 16?
Is this what you mean? I've had it for years. It's one of my favourites. What do you want it for?
I doubt if there's a kitchen in England that doesn't have a pan like this.
What are you up to, Robert?
Just doodling. Yes?
Mr. Truelove has been anxious to talk with you since Monday, Mr. Robert. Yesterday he was sufficiently provoked to inquire of Miss Tuff if you still worked for Blair, Hayward and Bennett.
God's sake, I was only out of the office for a day.
Mr. Bennett was also out of the office for the day, sir. Indeed, I understand he's not due back from London till this afternoon. Perhaps I should make arrangements to stay late so I can help him get through his arrears of work.
Close the door, Timmy. I'm afraid this franchise affair has changed the pattern of our lives a little.
Milford has always been a quiet and dignified town, sir. It's not pleasant to see this notoriety that's overtaken it.
I don't think I like Milford as much as I did a week ago. Have you seen the latest?
As I see it, Mr. Robert, we have a choice not between stories, but between human beings. And having now met Mrs. Sharp and her daughter, I feel quite certain they're incapable of such insane conduct.
You haven't met Miss Kane.
The word fascist is spelt incorrectly. They could have written something much worse, I suppose.
They wrote it in best quality paint.
Stolen, no doubt. Shall I arrange with Colin Hall to have the obscenities removed?
I've already tried Colin Hall and Blunt's. Everybody in Milford seems remarkably busy all of a sudden. I get the distinct impression they think the Sharps deserve this. Well, see what you can do, will you?
A garage should be equipped with something for removing paint. I'll send the boy round to speak to Mr. Peters. In the meantime, Mr. Robert.
Yes, I'll speak to Mr. Truelove.
They are important clients, huh? Oh.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Blair.
Inspector Grant.
No way to say this informally, I'm afraid. I have a warrant for the arrest of your clients, Mrs. Augustine Sharp and her daughter Marion.
Aqui no número 10 da Downing Street para uma sessão confidencial.